on this. Joining us live from Sydney is Nasser Mashni. He's the president of the Australia Palestine Advocacy Network. Thanks so much for speaking to us. The conversation that we've been having over the last few days feels no different to what we had a few months ago before the ceasefire was implemented. Again, we're seeing Israeli attacks. Again, we're seeing protests in Israel about the war. And again, we're seeing Palestinians being forced to flee with no aid and no help. And despite all the negotiating, all the talking, and new administration in the US, we seem to just be back at square one.
We are back at square one because the root issue is not being addressed, Yashini. Thank you so very much for having me on. What we need to be talking about is that this is a war on Palestinians. It's not a war on Hamas. It's not a war with Gaza. It's not a war. This is ethnic cleansing. This is genocide. This man, this indicted war criminal, Benjamin Netanyahu, who is desperately clinging to power because he knows he's going to jail. He knows he's going to jail as soon as this war, quote unquote, is over, that his cabinet will abandon him, that his public will abandon him, and he will go to war. These bombs were dropped at 2 a.m. to inflict maximum damage, to elicit a response from the resistance. All the while, in the next 12 hours, he was due to face indictment proceedings and to be questioned. This is the most sickening display of a human being seeking to avoid accountability from a legal fraternity, but also from his own people. And whilst we're talking about the protests within Israel, they're not protesting against apartheid. They're not protesting against genocide. They're not protesting against the decimation of a civilian captive population in an open-air prison. They're demonstrating for the return to status quo, the return to October 6, when they would, with impunity, kill Palestinians willy-nilly. It's time for the Israeli public to wake up to the ills of the political ideology that created the foundation of this state, Zionism, and to seek equality for all of people.
And there are hundreds of thousands of people around the world who, as you say, have woken up to what Israel has been doing for so many years now. We've seen global rallies since the war started. You yourself have been involved in those rallies in Australia, but what impact do you think they've had on the way people view what's happening in Palestine and the territories there, and the way that many countries have possibly changed their policy? Because as we've just outlined, Palestinians are still dying in the droves.
Whatever we're doing, it's not enough. The change in politics and politicians and government positions is not anywhere near fast enough. But what we do know is that there is change. There is change from Spain. There is change in Ireland. There's even change here in Australia. Earlier on today, I, with 10,000 other Melburnians, protested in the city. There is change. We're coming into a federal election, and Palestine will be an electoral issue. What we need is for it to be faster. What is happening today, Israel will never recapture the normalcy that it enjoyed on October 6. Israel's a pariah state today. Now, Israel is sitting where it belongs with the far-right parliaments in every country, wherever that might be. In my country here, but also with Donald Trump, also with the far-right in Germany and other countries. Increasingly, the world has woken up to what Zionism is, an ethno-religious, nationalist, racist movement. And people don't want to be associated with that. The faster we can get people to do more, to make Israel a pariah the way it belongs, that it shouldn't be at the Olympics, that it shouldn't be at the World Cup, that it shouldn't be participating in things like Eurovision, the better. Increasingly, the boycott, divestment and sanctions campaign is increasing in its palatability, but also the understanding from a wider section of the community as to what things they can do. They can choose to buy ethically and to avoid Israeli products that end up being complicit in the war crimes against the Palestinians.
When you talk about Israel as a pariah state, does it matter to Israel, if they even are that, when they still have the support of the most powerful country in the world, the United States, where it was just in the last 24 hours that the Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff, during an interview on Fox News, spoke about President Trump's plan for Palestinians to be moved out of Gaza to elsewhere. And I'm quoting him here when he says, "Who wouldn't take the opportunity to take their family somewhere else with some decent housing and a place to live?" Why is that type of statement so problematic for so many people who are pro-Palestine, who believe, of course, that Palestinians shouldn't have to leave their land?
Indeed, indeed. Well, I think, number one, we need to talk about pariah state. And it's important for us to realize that Israel exists the way it does and has existed the way it did because of the diplomatic, military, and media support that it's enjoyed. Increasingly in the West, we're seeing that being eroded. South Africa's last friend, its very last friend, was Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, two very renowned war criminals. Israel is losing its friends internationally, and increasingly, as a pariah state, it's going to continue to lose us. It'll hold America till the very end, as apartheid South Africa held America till the very end. But its end is nigh. Now, with respect to this patriarchal, colonialist, white supremacist ideology that Palestinians want to leave Gaza, Palestinians should leave Gaza whilst it is rebuilt. But the Palestinians should be able to go back to their inalienable homeland, to the homeland of the birth of their forefathers. Palestinians should go to the illegal settlements in the West Bank that must be evacuated according to the International Criminal Court ruling in July of 2024. Those settlements are illegal entirely, and those settlers must leave. The Palestinians in Gaza can go to those homes in the West Bank whilst preparations are made for Palestinians to be repatriated to historic Palestine, 48 Palestine, or so-called Israel. There is a solution, and it exists in international law. It exists in justice. Palestinians who were ethnically cleansed from their homes in 77 years ago go home to their lands. Now, anyone that doesn't want to share that land gets to leave. And if that's you as a Zionist, then so be it.
Nasser Mashni, thanks so much for giving us your views there from the Australia Palestine Advocacy Network.
Thank you.